Great. Well, whenever you're ready.
All right, so welcome to this Careers and Alumni talk. We are pleased to present PCA alumna Von. She's a British fashion designer. She just launched a new collection based on inclusivity, and she's going to talk to us about her experience, her journey, what she likes about PCA, and how to disrupt your thinking. So I will pass it on to Von, who's going to present herself.
Right, thank you so much. So yeah, hi everyone. So as I've been kindly introduced there, so yes, I am Von. So what I do at the moment is that I am in Paris still since graduating from PCA. I specifically did design for social impact. And on the side of that, the electives was the senior fashion design, fashion, basically, yeah, just the fashion design, as well as the community management and French, which I am still working on. But yes, but it is getting so much better than when I started there. But yeah, I am currently actually sat in a school called IFA Paris, which is part of where I work. And I will discuss more about this because it is a little bit confusing for some people of am I working in a school or what is it exactly? So yeah, I will go through that in more detail, but I did want to take you through a little bit of a journey today as to where this all kind of started and how. So if I could just actually have permission to share the screen, I do have some lovely images for you guys to take you through that. But do feel free to let me know if you have any questions and so on. So yeah, thanks for that. I have the permission. Okay. So yes, welcome to my careers talk today. I am specifically talking about career in fashion, and it won't be your traditional, oh, she's working in Dior as a designer or something, because actually I think it's important for people to know there's a lot more pathways than that actually. So just to kind of take you through of exactly what we're going to go through for the next hour, it is obviously who I am first, and then also personal experiences, so work experience, as well as how I came from the bachelor's all the way to the MA in design for social impact, and then all the way to now just working life, which would then bring me to the challenges of what I've experienced all the way throughout all these stages, and obviously some of which that you may be experiencing at the moment during your studies, and then at the end we can round up and have any questions if you guys have any, but although that's at the end, feel free to just let me know if I'm going too fast or anything doesn't make sense as well at any point. So I have this lady here who you may recognize, Devil Wears Prada, where everyone believes that the fashion world is all like that. It's catty. It's just, oh, if you don't design this, it's, you know, it's you just kind of it's cutthroat and all that stuff. While that may be true, there are other pathways in the fashion industry that don't necessarily have that impact, but at the same time, it's just, even if it is like that, it's not all like that. So maybe if you guys seen Emily in Paris, although she's not necessarily working in a fashion design environment, it's kind of the environment that people expect of a fashion brand or in the headquarters. So I have personally worked in the headquarters of French Connection, which you will see after this slide. But basically that is kind of where most of the experience started there. And before that, this is actually a YouTube video that I did of a day in the life of a fashion student. So you are free to watch this afterwards. But it's basically where I did my bachelor's in fashion design in Nottingham Trent University, which is in the UK. And this was just a vlog of the final year of how that went, which obviously I'm not sure actually who we have right now on the call, but maybe you may be able to relate with kind of time management, how things can be super difficult trying to handle in terms of everything. So this was actually just a vlog about how I handled that, and obviously before the actual the MA at Design for Social Impact at PCA. So you are free to watch that because that is still relevant. But the reason why I thought that was important is obviously student life can obviously lead to the work experiences that you have, whether you happen to bump into a tutor that knows someone, or even if you don't, work experience throughout the studies was actually very important, in order, for obvious reasons. Obviously you want it on your CV, but actually what people don't tell you a lot of the time is what you're learning in class is great, but it's only a portion of actually what you're going to experience in real life sometimes. And actually I learned that through my experience at French Connection. There I was, my little nice top there. And that's where I was the product licensing coordinator for a whole year. It started off as an internship, and actually this was a placement year, in between the second year and final year. So it was quite flexible at the school. You were able to do that, or you just continue straight to final year. But I thought it was very vital to just get this year's experience, because as you may find out soon, if you're in the fashion industry or even any kind of creative industry, they really value experience. And obviously sometimes it's more than what you can get as a student, because obviously I'm grateful I was able to get a year, but I know a lot of people aren't able to actually get that unless if they have this opportunity. So in this case, it's just to encourage you guys, actually, if you ever do have the opportunity to take any work experience, even if it's 3 weeks, because I did a few of those as well, definitely take it, because it all comes together, and you will also get a more well-rounded idea of what exactly you are going to get yourself into when you graduate. And after French Connection, I did do a very short one actually as part of Design for Social Impact, the MA. When I was studying that, we had the opportunity actually to partner up with any kind of industry or any kind of any kind of industry that we are interested in, because with Design for Social Impact, it was many of us from different backgrounds: graphic design, product design, all sorts of stuff. Obviously mine was fashion design, and that's what I wanted to take on further. So I decided to actually work with Revon Ver. So they're basically a online retail platform that sells very social or ethical brands. And yeah, it's really quite interesting actually. I was specifically working on market expansion. Now in this case, this was 2 months, so it's still not that long there compared to obviously the French Connection one. But again, I was able to be exposed to something else that I had not really done before. And actually, out of all of this experience, maybe you may have noticed that it wasn't just your usual, okay, I did fashion design at school, so I'm just going to go to a design role for my internships. It was really to understand what else is out there, and what could actually be more interesting than what I'm doing now. And actually, this is what led to me picking the pathway of wanting to do my own brand, which is obviously what I started before, at some point after, during the masters, but also actually now during my day-to-day work. So that's why I decided to stay in Paris, where now I am working at a fashion tech lab, as I mentioned. And it's kind of like in this startup culture as well, where we have this lab. This is actually me in the lab there, the same day that Linda saw me at the launch. And actually there it was just me showcasing how to use this fabric scanner. And that's just an example of some machinery that you may not have seen before, actually, where it's just about optimization of the fashion industry, how it could be more interesting, and how it can be more ethical or more time efficient in terms of doing stuff. Imagine here you have little sample that you got from what's it called, Saint-Pierre near Montmartre, and you got that sample, if they allow you, because I know some of them are like 30 centimeters minimum, but if they allow you to get a small sample like this, you obviously don't have to commit yourself to buying a whole roll of fabric to try and understand what it will look like. In this case, you actually get to understand it a little bit more through this, where you can make a digital fashion collection. So I don't know if any of you guys have seen the digital fashion show that happened last year. with her Nifa collection. So she is a Congolese in America, and she decided to, well, she's actually been working on her brand for a few years now, I think 6 years or so, but it's only now that it's gotten really big because of that digital fashion show, which is basically just going against the conventions of the fashion industry. So obviously how that links with what I'm doing is that obviously I will talk about the brand shortly, but in terms of this experience itself, it's about how are you shaping the world to be, to have within the production system. Is it going to be more fast? Is it going to be more sustainable? Because that's something that's really big in the fashion industry at the moment. And hopefully it continues to be as well, not just a trend. But also all the machinery we have as well, like virtual reality, Oculus Quest. For those, it's about how can you design in a more interesting manner rather than just the usual pen to paper, as we're all used to. And then in this case, what I wanted to personally improve on or to grow in with this career was also the business aspect, because working in the startup culture, you do get exposed to a lot of how business runs, how it starts, how it continues, how it may even fail, because we have seen that as well. So that's another interesting thing. And then obviously now teaching the actual 3D printing and laser cutting is now giving me a totally different, realm to what is available in the fashion industry. So I've now been teaching actually since earlier this year, specifically bachelors in their second year of their fashion design course, and then MBA fashion technology course, which is actually something that is very new to this place, where it started like in January. So there they're learning all sorts of things that, again, you may not think is related to fashion, but things such as computer science, coding and things like that. And all of this is what helps you start to come up with something a bit digitized as well. So I'm just going to quickly show you this Dropbox, because some videos I wasn't able to upload on there. But this is a DC Suite. This is a software that we learn, or at least that we're teaching. I don't teach this one specifically, but it's basically that collection that I was talking about, the Hanifa collection. It's about how you have an avatar that is literally dressed and looks a bit, hyper real. And then you have that as a way to save costs for actual fashion show, especially with COVID. There were no fashion shows happening at some point. So how can you create a collection out of this? And this is just an example of it being animated there. And what that looks like as well. I do have a better animation of another one, I think. Let's just see. Oh no, so this is just a pattern making. So if you guys are familiar with pattern making, that is, that's a nightmare as well. But yeah, this is another animation of another type. This is actually very interesting and very personal to me, because I was able to introduce the idea of inclusivity into the school. And that's when they actually introduced another course, not another course, but it's another module within the MBA's contemporary fashion course, where they now had to consider people with disabilities for their designs. So in this case, they were actually upcycling clothing, and then created it for people who are seated, so in a wheelchair, and things like that. So in this case, now where the technology comes in, and obviously the day job part, is where now they had to design their clothing and make it whatever they've now made physically, they had to translate that into a digital look. And this is actually an example that you see there, where actually the manufacturers of this software, fun fact, had never thought about doing a seated body before. So this is when now it was introduced, and they actually created this specifically for us. And that was actually really an interesting time, because again, it's about how, because obviously that's one of the main points of today, how can you think in a different manner than the norm? And in this case, obviously, it just shows you they didn't think of it, not that they're bad people, but it's just that we're all so used to the standardized idea of fashion, and everyone is standing, everyone is a similar size, or they have to fall under one size category and that's it. And as you all may know, that's not always the case. You might buy a size, well, my sizes I'm talking about are UK sizes, but if you buy like a size 8 in one shop, you're probably a size 10 in the other shop. And it's just never gonna be as, you know, perfect with a standardized culture that we live in. So there are many things actually that are happening in the industry that are trying to you know, reverse this trend, or at least this norm, because it's more than a trend actually, of the standard way of thinking. So in this case, we have had startups that come to us. This is now the day job part with the actual Fashion Tech Lab, where now we've had startups who actually come to us and say, I've got this app that is all about sizing. And what we want to do is we use a phone, we scan you, and then you get all your measurements just like that. We actually have a machine like that in the lab. It's not just with the phone though. This one you need to actually step into a frame and actually get measurements. Let me just see if I have that just while I'm on the topic. I might have a picture of that. But basically, the reason why I'm talking about this is because it's the idea of how can these technologies help the fashion industry to be a little bit more personalized and customized, which again is on that theme of going beyond just the norm. Obviously, this is not something you'll see on a website most of the time, where, you know, you can have your own measurements, you know, taken into account of what you buy. We have had many other startups who will partner with a company such as this one. This is actually the frame in our lab, body scanner, who actually in just 2 seconds, the way she's posing there, usually there's feet marks at the bottom as well, she's able to get her measurements in literally 2 seconds. So already you're eradicating that standard way of measuring yourself with a measuring tape. If you have a client who's abroad and you don't really trust that they're going to measure themselves properly, you can just get them to go into a booth like this and they get accurate results. Obviously there are other things that you have to put into account, because obviously she's wearing a dress here. Usually the curtains would be closed and, you know, you have privacy to get more accurate results, if you know what I mean. But yes, that's basically some of the solutions that are always kind of brought up to us. And just an interesting thing that, you know, how people can actually kind of go beyond this is we connect that with now our 3D printers. So you saw obviously that there are there's a body scan with the measurements, but then there's also the actual avatar of yourself. So you get to see yourself as a mini me. And then from that, we actually 3D printed that as well. I believe I have this as well, just to show you. So yeah, just to see how these things kind of connect to each other. Through that digital avatar, we were able to actually 3D print it. So you have your own little avatar that you can now display in your home. So that's how, you know, we kind of make that happen there. And we have other startups working on trend forecasting, using data from Instagram. And if you're a brand, you can basically get that data to understand how the new trends are going to be. So you're probably, if you are in the fashion industry, you're probably familiar with WGSN, which is basically the biggest kind of trend forecasting website there is. But actually in this case, they are kind of basing it on a lot of different data from different sources. But whereas this startup that we work with called T Fashion, they actually work specifically on data from Instagram. And they've actually done a partnership with Pantone so that the color trends are also according to those references as well, not just the other stuff. So that's that in terms of pretty much the fashion tech side of things. And maybe I'll probably have a lot of questions on that as well at some point. But on top of that, I have my own inclusive clothing collection. So with this all pretty much started from the bachelor's, where we were introduced to this in the second year of bachelor's. A lady came in and proposed us to do to think beyond the norm. Basically, she had a skiing accident, which meant that she had to now use a wheelchair for about, I think, 6 months. And during those 6 months, she was looking around for clothing that she can make it easier for her to dress while she's in that wheelchair and so on. And she obviously didn't really find anything at the time. And if she did find anything, it was usually for the older demographic. So literally we're talking like really 70-year-olds and stuff like that, because they automatically assume that, not that they automatically assume, but in fashion in general, what I found during my research is that a lot of brands stay away from doing these types of or dealing with these categories like disability and so on, because they just assume that, oh, maybe it's just older people that need it, basically. And while that may be true, the disabled community is a growing population, actually, because anyone can become disabled at any point. So in this case, if someone has a disability, and I've spoken to a few of them within their 20s or in their teens, they obviously want to dress the way we all dress. They want to go to Zara the way everyone goes to Zara. But in this case, depending on obviously the complexity of their disability, they're gonna maybe struggle finding something that either they can put on themselves or even that their carer may find difficult. One of the things that I found most interesting was there is this thing where if someone literally is kind of like paralyzed, maybe from the chest downwards or something, they obviously heavily depend on a carer to dress them. So what I found is that if you just think about what you're wearing today, you probably had to, put your arms through it. You probably had to, kind of do all this stuff. But actually someone with a disability needs someone, depending again on which disability, they will need someone to help them out, actually. So imagine something like this probably is a nightmare, actually, for someone who literally is paralyzed. So they need to really try and make it easier for them to wear. So this is obviously where, we doing all this research in the BA in fashion design, that I started to be familiar with all of this. And the funny thing is, I actually already kind of was exposed to it, but I didn't really know it. And it's basically, I have actually brothers with autism. And from that, they basically have, the implication is obviously a little bit different, because with a physical disability, it's kind of obvious, maybe where the difficulty is. But with a cognitive disability such as autism, there are other implications that do impact their day-to-day life with clothing, which is actually one of them, the texture of the garments. Is it too rough? The tags that you guys probably have on your back, which you also may find quite irritating as well. And actually, just another thing that I found during that time was, even though I had seen my brothers, literally saying no to certain clothes and so on, I didn't know I could do anything about it until actually this point in the bachelor's. And that's why I really wanted to take the opportunity to continue that in Paris, with PCA, because what I was looking for specifically at this point was, okay, great, I've done the fashion design part, I've done, the nice clothing collection, fashion show that we all do at the end of the year. Now I want to kind of look beyond that and make something that's meaningful, in my eyes anyway. So this is where now the collection, actually this image that you see on the left is actually one of my pieces that I made during my time at PCA. And what was great about it actually was that we also had like ethics classes. And I don't know if you guys have watched The Good Place on Netflix. We literally basically learn what you guys are seeing there. It's a great show. And they always talk about ethics and the debates there. So I think that's just one of the things that was actually anchoring my learning and what I was trying to achieve with this MA. So with that, we had the final project that we had to do, individual project, which was pretty much the whole of the last semester before graduating. So in this case, it was dedicated, before that it was already, because my whole dissertation was on this topic. So it was already that I was dedicating the dissertation times and stuff on research. And then now when it came to the individual project, and the last semester, it was now about the creation and prototyping, and how can I make all of this research come to life. Now, I must say, one of the challenges there was actually getting people who were interested in being interviewed, because I did have a lot of kind of contacts, you know, from the NHS in England, even here in France. I was going to different kind of clinics or hospitals, but there are so many complications because one, they can't, when I say they, I mean like the actual people working at these places, they can't just hand you over a contact book of all the people that have disabilities in their clinic, because obviously that's invasion of privacy. But I did think that a lot of people would be interested in this. So in this case, I was just now working more on how can I just be in contact with these people individually. So through that, I was able to get there in the end, but gosh, it was a bit of a nightmare. it was a lot of work, and maybe you guys might be finding the same thing when writing your dissertation. It's either that, or it's just that maybe you're not finding enough people because maybe your topic is actually quite different. And that's another thing as well. In the industry, you guys may or may not have seen that Tommy Hilfiger is one of the few people, well, actually the only mainstream brand actually that's actually doing something properly. And when I say that, it's something I've discussed in my dissertation, where a lot of brands like to use a bit of tokenism, where they have a disabled person modeling for them, and then that's it. They forget about it for the next collections to come. But whereas Tommy Hilfiger actually has stuck to it. It first started off as a collection that is actually for kids, for disabled kids, but then it's now into adults as well. I do think that there's still a lot of work to go there in terms of physical aesthetics. They are all great garments, but I think overall, I think what's happened in this adaptive world is that a lot of the time it has to look athletic, or not athletic, but sporty, leisure wear kind of stuff, instead of it, you know, also being something you can wear at a wedding and so on. So this is actually what I was trying to achieve with this collection, which you'll see the campaign here, which I'm sure Linda will remember from the Bastille show that we did. So this was just a campaign thing I just did myself. And another thing that I think you guys may find if you do end up doing your own business afterwards, that you're going to probably have to do a lot of things by yourself. So I had to do the recording by myself. I had to do the editing by myself and everything. But it's great. You save money that way. And also if you can also build your own skills that way. But yeah, with this, it was just to show you how inclusive these garments are. These were basically the main two. I did have kind of other samples of how maybe I can add a pocket that has texture, you know, and things like that, that can help different disabilities. But these two were specifically to show how you kind of wear these. There are other videos if you want to see later on of how you actually wear these garments. But actually these are the main two. So here is the jumpsuit that is fully detachable, and here was just for it to be someone in a wheelchair can sit there and actually doesn't need to wiggle around, put one leg in first and the other and all this stuff. So all of this that you see here, fully detachable up here, fully detachable on the sides. And actually this actually was on ITV News back in England. They really liked the idea, so they just thought, hey, have some airtime. So that was quite interesting. And I did get quite a lot of response from that. And what I really liked about that is that a lot of people were saying, oh my gosh, this is so different. I'm happy someone is actually thinking of our community and things like that. And they were actually talking more about how their day-to-day at work was actually impacted through what they wear. So obviously what you're seeing on the screen right now is not really something you would wear to work, but actually that is why I'm now, you know, in the process of making a new collection that is actually a little bit more commercial, whereas this is a little bit more dressy. You can wear this maybe to a party or and so on. But this dress here is actually something that is fully detachable as well. It's something that's now kind of like a brand identity from what I'm trying to create, where it has to be fully detachable. Otherwise, it's not a Von Ruz thing, basically. And yeah, this is just kind of like little shots of how that happens. So that's pretty much that in the main thing. But I know there were certain things that I I need to kind of cover here, which I know one of it was kind of like the biggest transitional issues that I faced during all of this. So I think the biggest one was definitely looking for a job in the first place. So obviously when I talk about that, it's more about the about the fashion tech lab that I work at now. I think what I found in France or Paris is that a lot of people say, oh yeah, we're looking for someone who can speak English. And then yes, they are looking for someone who can speak English, but you must also be fluent in French. And it only makes sense, obviously, if their clients also, if they need to relate to their clients in a different language, or if you just happen to get a query from someone who is in France, it does make sense. But obviously that just means that it's a little bit frustrating when looking for jobs. That's something that I found personally. But yeah, I am really lucky to have had this job that has allowed me to have a lot of different experiences. Obviously, I mentioned earlier being able to actually introduce a whole module to the school to consider inclusivity, all the way down to what I'm doing now and all the different developments that we're actually currently working on at the lab. And also being able to have my Friday off to actually work on my brand. So yeah, just a little bit of encouragement there, that even if you do find that after you graduate or even before you graduate, looking for a job and everyone's saying no, there will definitely be a yes somewhere in there, and it will eventually come. And that doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily be in Paris as well. I know a lot of people that wanted to stay in Paris, but they couldn't, just because they couldn't find a job here. But also they ended up going elsewhere and they actually love it there. And I think that's why it's important to just bear in mind that it's not always about, I'll just get any job and I'll just settle for it, because that will frustrate you as well. Unless if you're willing to kind of stick it out and wait for the right job, fair enough. But that's just one of definitely the transitional issues I experienced there. But more so when it comes to my own brand, what's difficult there is about just getting that support. I think sometimes you need to have a good team and so on, but it is quite difficult because one, you need to be able to afford that, and especially as a startup, that's not really going to happen. And you also want to save in the meantime as well. So it is quite difficult to kind of juggle that. And obviously trying to juggle the two things, the brand, but also working here and now also teaching on top of that. Has been quite crazy actually, and sometimes I wonder how I've been able to progress, but it's somehow just happened. So but definitely like for the brand specifically, it has taken a little bit longer than I expected. I would have loved this to already be viral and big by now, since like last year when I actually went onto the news in England. But yeah, since then though, I think a lot of people have taken me a little bit more seriously, because now they're seeing that vision. One of the things that I think Linda will remember as well is people actually asking, is this like, how's this going to work? How on earth are you going to, cater to different disabilities altogether? Just people not believing in it, basically. Not in me personally, but in the idea. And that's probably going to happen to you guys, especially if you're doing fashion. It's going to happen all the time. Even the big brands, they can come up with something crazy, and people will still not believe in it. But in the end, it can go viral, it can go big, or even if it doesn't, as long as you're doing what you believe in, I think that's what's really important there. And what else? I'm just double checking, but do I have any questions while I just check there? No?
But it's not really a question, but I think you asked yourself the question of how have I been able to do all this? And I think it is because you decided to stick with what you're passionate about. And that's really the key. And if you want to launch your own venture, whatever it may be, whether it's fashion or elsewhere, I mean, it will take time. There will be setbacks, and you really have to feel very strongly about it to push through.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, most definitely. Yeah. Oh, that's true. Well, thanks for answering actually that question. Yeah. But that is true, actually. I think sometimes I remind myself of who has actually been involved and who has helped when they've helped, because despite obviously what I mentioned earlier, there have been actually people, I think now this year more than ever, who have really stepped up and saying, here we can do a free photo shoot with you. Oh, here's some music, use it, instead of, you know, having to pay royalties and stuff and all of that stuff. And people just all of a sudden believe in it. So again, it's just depends on who you're surrounding yourself with, but also just enjoying that process and just cracking on. So yeah, definitely that's my motto, actually, just crack on. I love saying that. But yeah, the next part was here. Did you feel that school prepared you for the workforce and the real world? And I think definitely it has, in the sense of we did have actually a business, not an elective, but a module actually as part of MDes. And that was really nice. We learned actually a little bit about business model canvas and things like that. And entrepreneurship actually was one of the classes we had a little bit more regularly than that one. And that one specifically in my eyes was great, because what I found was when I now started this fashion tech lab job, that's when I now started to see, oh, I you know, we've already learned about this, and then I can start to now develop whatever it is I've learned into that. And that's actually been quite nice there. Obviously, as I did mention before when I was talking about the year's placement and all that stuff, sometimes there will be things that you won't learn in school, because it's just impossible to learn everything in school. So it is really important to get that work experience as well, as much as you can, just to complement whatever it is that you do learn in school. And in terms of the real world can be harsh in terms of many things, I guess. So in this sense, I think, I don't know if you could say, I mean, yeah, I would say, I think if you think back, maybe you guys have had your critiques so far. Obviously, teachers can be quite honest with things, which obviously you need. And that's actually really what is going to happen in the real world. If you kind of produce something that maybe doesn't make sense, you can obviously be told, and this is what you're going to have to do in the real world. But it just depends as well on your environment. I think sometimes you can either have a much less hectic environment than at school. What I found is I seem to have more time on weekends now that I'm not at school, again, which I still find strange considering all the stuff I'm doing. But I don't know, maybe it's just time management, because that's something, oh yeah, if anything, that's something that really, oh gosh, that really sharpened me during school, because during my bachelor's, I did put a YouTube video on this, so you can watch the full story of this, but I did actually fail my second year in bachelor's fashion design, just because of time management. I was producing the work and everything, it was just time management that made me fail. So then from there, it was at the beginning when I was doing my French Connection placement. I could have easily lost that placement had I not actually done the, what's it called, referral on time and on all that, and even handing that in was also a problem as well. But in the end, I got there, and I think from that moment I said, this is never going to happen again. It can't, especially final year. Imagine having to redo final year again. That would have been a mess. So actually, yeah, so that's I think you should definitely watch that for encouragement. But definitely in terms of the real world, there's no way I can ever get in a position like that again just because of that. And I think that's one of the things that shaped me there. And what was your favorite and most minor favorite thing about school? So I think what I loved the most was obviously the friendships that I made, the fiance that I got from school as well, that Linda knows about. But yeah, that was obviously...
We can't guarantee that for all our students. I think we're very lucky to be there at the same time as he was.
Yeah, no, yeah, honestly, it's really lucky how these things happen. But yes, not everyone, that's not everyone's story. But anyway, in terms of friendships, I think that's definitely something to hold on to. I did hear this from someone, I don't want to say it was, what's his name? Oh, I don't want to say it's Elon Musk. but I feel like it's him or someone else who's kind of like that level, who basically said that you should stay friends, or at least make the friends that you just stick with the people that you're meeting, because you never know, maybe you can make businesses together in the future, or you can easily be inspired by them in the future. You just never know. So utilize that time as much as possible, because actually when you're not in that environment anymore, you're kind of alone, or you'll still have your friends, but in terms of when you're at work, you're alone. You're not really with all that social time there. So enjoy that. But I guess the least favorite actually of school would definitely be, I guess, sometimes writing the dissertation, just because I feel like there's always that time constraint that you always have to work with. And obviously, if now at this point you are really working on the time management, it's always like, oh man, if I had more time, maybe I would have written this better, or I would have had more of this. But anyway, there's always opportunities even after that to continue writing. So it's not the end of the world, even if that's your case. If you're listening to this, it's just a case of prioritizing. That's really the main thing. And I think, yeah, that's all yes, that's the last question. If you could go back in time, would you attend the school again? Let's see. Well, I don't know. There's many different reasons for this. So I think I would personally say no, just because I don't want to be in school again for all the critiques and all of that stuff. But I would say yes on the other hand, because it is a nice growing environment. You get to experience so many different things at once. We did so many things actually at PCA, and all the opportunities there. In terms of kind of visits that we had. I remember on Saturdays with my class anyway, specifically MDes, we got to kind of go on field trips every Saturday, which was really nice, not just for the sake of it being just like a trip, but it was actually learning more culture about France and getting to know more about the places in France. Because at that time, or specifically Paris and Ile-de-France, because at this time, I didn't know much. So I don't know about you guys who are listening, if you've been here for a long time or not, but I can say that's one of the things that's helped me to kind of start to understand life here, and to start putting context to things and learning stuff. Yeah, definitely. And I think, just that environment of you have people guiding you. We obviously, during the dissertation, we had mentors. We had also people one-to-one feedback, which obviously I'm not really going to get now during a brand. I do have my own mentor for that, actually, who's really amazing with business. But in terms of kind of the design aspect and stuff like that, it just won't be the same as school. So those are definitely the things that you should just, exploit while you are still there. And I think those are all the questions that I got from you, Caris, that I've answered. But I don't know if there's any more or any clarifications that need to be made.
Any questions from you guys? Maya and
do you want to say maybe just sort of practically how you eventually got this job? Was there an opening, or did you go after them, or how did that happen?
So for this one, actually, it was linked with PCA. I forgot to mention that was where I got this nice email from Yoshiko saying we have these job opportunities coming up, and usually you should probably be getting that now as well from Caris, but it's just the messaging that was saying what the person was looking for. Now, actually, at the time, it was actually an internship first, and now it's actually an actual job. And obviously, that's another way that you guys can start considering these opportunities. As I mentioned, even if it doesn't turn into a job afterwards, it's still ideal to get that experience anyway. So that was kind of my thinking. Even if it doesn't, I was hoping it would turn into a job because I really enjoyed it. But it's still good for experience. So yeah, I just basically replied to that to the appropriate email and sent that CV and covering letter. And actually there's a lot of power in covering letters, guys. I know a lot of you, if you don't see that covering letters actually required, you just be like, okay, I won't do one. But actually, it's probably going to help you quite a lot. It's so much better than just the CV alone sometimes as well. So yeah, so those were the practical steps.
Okay, perfect. So if there aren't any questions, I would like to thank you so much, Von, for your words of encouragement, your advice, and I wish you good luck with your collection, that it'll be more visible, and that you stick to your gut, you stick to your vision, and that you will go far, and just crack on, as you say.
Thank you so much. Please do follow on Instagram and everything. There is a new collection coming up. Despite all the challenges I have mentioned today, that is really exciting things coming up with that one, actually.
Great. Well, have a nice rest of the day, everyone. And
thank you.
See you later.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.